First, even though Southwest Airlines is saying that the reimbursement of reasonable expenses is applicable for those flights between December 24th and January 2nd, 2023, be aware that there were some flights that got canceled or delayed even before then, even before December 24th, and it seems possible that flights are still getting canceled up to January 3rd, maybe January 4th. We're still unsure to the date that those cancellations are going to happen. In the last few days, Southwest Airlines has been changing this website, and therefore our information will be also changed accordingly. We're trying to monitor the situation as closely as possible. So just be aware that if you got a flight that got delayed or canceled before those dates, we urge you to still submit your request for reimbursement. And there are other remedies that we will discuss and show you with our platform. The second thing to consider is that even though Southwest Airlines mentions that they will reimburse those expenses, they have changed some of the wording around it. Okay, so now they are providing some examples. Before they were not doing that. So just be aware that this could still change in the following days. The third thing to note is that Southwest Airlines says that they will honor reasonable requests for reimbursement. Okay, we don't have a disclaimer or a definition from Southwest Airlines on what reasonable means. Again, from our perspective, reasonable should mean any expense that was needed to survive or basically navigate the circumstance due to a delay or cancellation from the flight. Hopefully, we're going to have more clarification from Southwest Airlines on what reasonable means. But for now, we don't have clarification on that term. However, Southwest Airlines has said that they are taking three main categories in order to request your reimbursement. First goes to meals, so that could mean food at a restaurant. Say you ate at Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, any small kiosk at an airport. That could enter into the category of meals. The second category are hotel accommodations, and the third are alternate transportations, in which now Southwest has given some clarification that means rental cars, tickets on other airlines. However, it could also be extended to if you took an Uber, you took a cab or a taxi, you took a bus in order to arrive to your destination. There are multiple ways to understand this third category. On the second category, just as a small footnote, even though it says hotel accommodations, if you spent on an Airbnb or an alternate accommodation, we still suggest that you enter that request for reimbursement, because we still don't have clarification from Southwest if that is only applicable for hotels, or it could also be applicable to other accommodation methods such as an Airbnb, etc. And the final thing to note before we go into the process on how to request a reimbursement is that you need to attach copies of your expenses for review. That means that someone from Southwest Airlines is going to review your expenses, and you need evidence or some sort of documentation with those expenses. So let's go through three different scenarios to explain how you might be able to provide evidence or documentation for those expenses. First, let's talk about cash transactions. At airports, it could be possible that you went into a vending machine or a kiosk in which you paid with cash. You paid $10 for a sandwich or $5 for a drink, and sometimes on those transactions, rarely you get a receipt, or you didn't get a receipt from a vending machine. So what do you do on those circumstances? What we are suggesting at this point, and again, taking into consideration that there's no additional clarification from Southwest Airlines, is creating a small spreadsheet or table in which you, to your best recollection and based on your memory, you enter the amount of the expense, the nature of that expense, meaning if it was a meal, if it was a hotel accommodation, or an alternate transportation. Third, a description on what item did you get. So for instance, if it was a vending machine, you can say, I got a sandwich at vending machine near gate 28. And finally, the date in which that transaction happened. Again, this is to make up for the lack of receipts whenever there's a cash transaction. That is scenario number one. Now let's go to scenario number two. And that's when you have a credit card or a debit card transaction. If you didn't have a receipt based on that transaction, you can see your credit card statements. You can take a look at the latest transactions that happened during those days in which your flight got canceled. If you're not familiar in how you can see your credit card statement, you can go into your online banking, or you can contact your bank and they will provide that statement for you. So with that, you can also use that as evidence to show the expenses that you incurred due to the cancellation or the delay of flights from Southwest Airlines. And the third and final scenario is if you indeed have a receipt. If you have a receipt, take pictures, scan them, or have a way to digitally record those expenses. It's important to keep track of that. Or the second is if it's a digital receipt, always keep them on a folder on your computer or on your phone, but it's important to keep those receipts. If you don't have a receipt in any type of transaction that you did, it's important to try and request a copy of that receipt from the business or establishment if it's possible. Again, if it's a vending machine, you will not be able to have a receipt from that transaction. And that's when we are urging you to use the spreadsheet or table approach. But if you don't have any other solutions to having a receipt, again, just take into consideration that until there's further clarification from Southwest Airlines, we should try to remediate the circumstance with that approach. And based on those three scenarios, if you already have, again, your digital receipts, your physical receipts, your Excel spreadsheet, or whatever record or ledger of your expenses, now you can go and request that reimbursement. And here we're gonna explain how you can do this process. And again, at the bottom of this video, you will be able to go directly into the form to request a reimbursement.